you don't have to have it all figured out. I mean, none of us did. We still don't. But that you can take your passions, your desires, and what might lead you in one direction. It's a super good thing to realize, you know what? I don't want to do that.
Welcome to Insider Career Conversations, a podcast that highlights non-traditional paths to careers and professions. I am Sylvia Juarez, your host. I'm also an education consultant and advocate. I have worked with different organizations and value everyone's unique story. This has taken me to work to help align values and skills when somebody is pursuing a career or life goals. Insider Career Conversations explores education, background, job descriptions, and unique day in the life of a professional. Guests in the field will discuss their journey and give advice on components of that particular field, like occupational licenses or maybe even continued education. Discussions will approach ways to consider your next professional steps and how you can find the right fit. This season's conversations touch on development and fundraising goals and how they are part of our community and the engagement that we might have as not only individuals, but as a society. My co-host, Molly, and I have worked together not only to explore our own interests and curiosities, but to support each other as others do the same. Molly, can you believe that we've known each other forever? Okay, maybe not forever, but you know what I mean. It's exciting that we can come together and expand on collected experiences.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel, Sylvia, when I think about, how our worlds have intersected and how we began both in different careers, but our careers have led us to this path where we've rejoined forces again, which is great. And I'm really excited to meet Edith because I haven't met her yet. And so, Edith, would you please introduce yourself and tell us maybe about your educational journey and how you landed in the field that you're in now with corporate sponsorship?
Hi, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. As far as my journey, I graduated from Cal State University Long Beach with a BA in political science. I currently serve as a major gifts manager, and my background in fundraising has mainly been in events, corporate sponsors, and major donors. I have done many events dealing with corporate sponsors, from intimate major donor cultivation dinner parties to large 800 guest receptions. I was also on various different committees to hone my skills with volunteers, solicitations, and corporate sponsorships. I focused on corporate sponsorships more so to learn more about corporations. I was on committees for organizations whose mission I felt very strongly for. And again, it's about having a connection and believing in the mission. Although I did go a little different route, I was part of the Super Bowl committee. I was mainly on the committee to learn more about how to put together large sporting events. I knew it would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I took it. It was a great experience. Now, with events and corporate sponsorships, it's interesting. COVID has changed the world of events. And so things are slowly going back to pre-COVID ways, but we're not there yet. And so the pandemic changed my views on many things, including my career. I came to realize that I wanted to focus more on donors, especially major donors. Having a one-on-one relationship with people has been a wonderful experience, and I really enjoy it. People are different, and they come from all walks of life. Hearing and learning about their experience has provided me many learning opportunities, which I greatly appreciate.
That's awesome. I appreciate everything you're saying, not only because football is a big part of my family, but I think you're touching on something that's really important, that we see big events happening and we often appreciate it from afar. Some may even get to participate, but I don't think we really give respect to the individuals who are putting events of that caliber together. And I think event planning is something that's part of development in a very unique way. There is an art to it, if I may be a little cliche, because there is months and months of planning for essentially a few hours worth of work, right? Like you do all of this long-term planning. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience when you are putting events on? That's not a part of your current position, but when you were putting events on, to the scale that you said, from intimate settings to large. When an individual is interested in being part of a world that does that type of planning, because it's unique, what type of traits and characteristics do you think that you have, or that you see individuals carrying as they're doing this particular task? What do you think is a value that somebody can think about, that I can be part of something in this capacity?
There's a couple things. You definitely have to be organized. That's key, organized. And the other one is you have to be able to communicate. Communication is huge in all aspects of fundraising development. Any aspect of it, whether it be events, corporate sponsorships, donors, you have to know how to communicate. And yes, the planning of any event, it could be a small one or a large one, takes many months. Something like the Super Bowl takes years to put together, whether it be communicating with volunteers, communicating with board members, community members, people in various industries, co-chairs. The whole point is to be able to communicate and update where are you on your timeline and who exactly is going to partake in the event. And so you put that together, and it's a constant revolving door of communication,
Right.
and keeping track of things. Record keeping is essential. So you have to be very meticulous.
Right. No, and I can so appreciate that, because essentially that's what I do when I'm putting a project together. And from proposal to execution, the timing of everything just kind of leans on it. And I have noticed that you mentioned earlier that COVID has done a number on how people approach things. In your opinion, has COVID actually taken things in a direction that's a little bit more advanced? For me personally, I'm taking advantage more of like digital expectations and technology, using technology as a tool, as opposed to in the past, things that were maybe more pen and paper, shall I say, for some of us of a certain age. But do you see that there is either an advancement when it comes to how individuals communicate, and if it's faster, or do you see it being more cumbersome?
Yes. So definitely doing things online is easier, faster. And social media, you have to take advantage of social media with fundraising, any aspect of it, especially when you're doing events and you're promoting various campaigns. So COVID gave this extra push to nonprofits of let's go. But at the same time, COVID pulled down many fundraisers who were putting together events because events stopped. So this stream of revenue that's coming in has all of a sudden completely stopped. And so people have had to think of various ways to do events. And again, we were doing events through Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. Very different. Yeah. I'm pointing in that very specifically because, again, for those that want to make a pivot, because it's not just about an age group, it's a generation that perhaps didn't jump into understanding that technology was something that they had to be more relatable to when it comes to a professional version versus a personal version. Or that's how they socialize versus using it to be more professional, which still two different worlds when you're trying to be more of a professional capacity, especially because you're talking about individuals and organizations that are higher caliber and are expecting a certain level of professionalism, even when it comes to their digital exchanges versus in-person ones, or however you may recognize them.
Exactly.
Edith, I wanted to jump in and ask a follow-up when you were talking about engagement, because that's something that Sylvia and I have talked with her other guests about. And how do you engage someone? How do you, in the major gift world, I know we talk about tee someone up. And in my experience, I was at a university. Really what COVID did, as you said, was it made us think about other ways. In some ways, we were able to reach people that we were not able to bring in person for an event. So now we're going to have an event and we're going to stream it, or we're going to have a Q&A with maybe some actors from a play that maybe the people couldn't have come to the campus and attended that event, but they could do the Q&A. And I don't know if that same sort of benefit, I guess, really, did you find that at all with corporate sponsors? Were they just as willing to sponsor an event or some kind of initiative, knowing that there might be even some kind of free advertising for them just because they might be on a panel or something like that? Can you address that?
Yeah, so it's actually gone both ways. In the beginning, it wasn't too big of a deal. Corporations were definitely willing to be part of online Zooms, webinars. And what happened, unfortunately, is that they got kind of tired
Oh,
of Zooming it.
Fatigue.
okay.
And so,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. And with COVID getting less and less of being such an evil word, per se,
Right.
people want to go in person. But there's a caveat. Many corporations are trying to move away from events. And so they're asking many organizations to find another way, another method as to why the corporation should be involved or donate to the organization. And so organizations have their work cut out. But you can find ways. You can find programs for corporations to sponsor.
Right. I think, Edith, one of the things that I appreciated from working with the university also was that in my area, my region, I was responsible for the alumni. As a professional, I was the only alum in that area. So I unofficially became responsible for the alumni development of what we needed to do, in this case, in Southern California. The university I worked for was in Northern California. I say that because sometimes there's something very formal, like you did, and you were given that task. Other individuals like myself, being part of a world-renowned university, was given this responsibility about alumni. So now you've got these partnerships with individuals, but also those individuals have partnerships with organizations or corporations that want to be aligned to your namesake. Can you tell me a little bit about the skills or the traits that you've had to use to finesse? Because I know that I'm pretty honest and pretty straightforward with people about why we're doing things together or why we're doing this. As just my grooming, I was groomed in corporate before I came into education. I was part of a corporation and everything was very straightforward. This is what you did. This is what you're responsible for. That was it.
Yeah.
Came into education a little bit more gray, sometimes a little bit more for my liking than I was used to. And now at 53, I've grown into the type of person that I'm very clear about. This is what we're doing and this is why I need to do it this way. That said, for the individual that is doing it informally, what are some of the things that have helped you to be able to have some of these conversations, like you said, where a donor or somebody is telling you, in order to get my support, you need to do X. How do you manage that in a professional way without the frustration showing, and in some cases, the anger? How do you temper that?
I definitely like to have some kind of background on who I'm speaking to, and sometimes I don't have any. So that goes a long way. But I definitely keep in mind that I need to be kind, understanding, and have a lot of patience. And I always have to have my thinking hat on. This is where my critical thinking skills, I have to be on alert just to find out what exactly does the donor need? What are they trying to tell me that they're happy with? What are they not? And so I need to definitely have a lot of attention to detail. I have to be comfortable speaking in a small group or a large group. And I need to know how to handle and be adaptive in an ever-changing environment. And so a lot of it has to deal with having patience.
I can definitely see that.
I think patience is something that we could all use more of. And no matter what the topic is. And I definitely agree, Edith. And I'm curious about maybe, I don't think we've touched yet on your education that made you kind of choose this field. When Sylvia and I first spoke, I said, I don't think anybody wakes up and says, I want to be a fundraiser. But we all sort of fall into it in a different way. I came to fundraising through first student services and getting my master's degree in educational administration. And, then having a life, stopping out, having some kids, and then going back and thinking, well, I guess I do education now, and thought it was at a high school level, and then found myself in the opportunity to be in the development world. And I got my foot in the door there through annual giving, which I always say is the soup to nuts of development, right? So you're doing a little bit of everything. Then how did you get your start?
Oh, man. So it's interesting. I started at a young age. I was always interested in politics and law. And fast forward into high school, I was always taking part in various types of fundraisers, and I really enjoyed raising money. When I was in college, I thought about going to law school. I was also intrigued with policy. So my senior year in college, I was working for a nonprofit, which provided legal support and services to help people with legal issues who are low income. Working there, I got to experience and see firsthand the life of a lawyer. But interestingly, I was actually hired to help put together their large awards reception. And so I was introduced to a world which I really liked, and I knew I was pretty good at it. I was good at organizing and solving problems. So from that moment on, I stayed in the nonprofit sector, and I continued in events, and I learned more about various fundraising methods. I've always enjoyed helping and picking people up who are marginalized, whether it be by providing services or trying to change policy. Personally, policy has always intrigued me. I like to fundraise for organizations which help change government policies. So going back to college, working for that legal nonprofit, it opened my eyes to the power of changing policies.
Yep.
And so change comes from power. And for me, empowering people has always been extremely important to me.
I love that you're saying that, because I think so much right now is happening in our society, in our different individual communities where we may be. And the word change is tossed around a lot, but the new phrase that I'm hearing is disrupting. And I feel like I've been disrupting my entire professional life just by my being.
You're a professional disruptor.
Just by the sake of being in a corporate world where I was in compliance at one point, being Mexican, a Mexican woman, and having the face that didn't necessarily fit in that particular space. And then I went into education, again, representing a university that's world renowned. I would walk in and everybody would be like, oh, okay, this is your seat. You can tell the shock on their face. But I think it's important that as we're all trying to find our place, it may not be the place that we think we want to be in. As I know you keep referencing law school and policy and all of that, but here you are impacting. The dollar does a lot when it comes to power. So raising that money and making sure that there's those connections that can fund what those causes are, I think make you a fascinating woman, in my opinion, but also on top of that, powerful, because you are making a cause come true with the funding that you get for it. And that's always one of the things that I've admired about Molly, is that she's very humble, but at the same time, put her in a room and she's got to get job done. And there it is, it comes together. So as you think about policy, what do you see right now that's exciting to you, that you see is really kind of moving along when it comes to that blend that you love about policy and causes? What do you see happening that's exciting for you?
Well, right now we live in such a interesting time, and there's so many policies that need change. And it's just our reality that we live in. And so I've always seen that probably at a high school level. And I know that was a huge reason why I just continued on that path. But as far as the excitement is that, for me, I know that I can make a change. I know that I can do something different for someone. Right. That I might not be able to change the world, but I know I can reach out to many people through social media. Today, people are taking advantage of policies such as diversity and inclusion. And so this is where corporations, you have to have them walk the talk. And so that to me is exciting. And that's another way of changing policy. And then there's something that in the fundraising world, for me, that's pretty exciting is these giving circles. People are coming together and they're increasing ways of getting together, thinking and raising money for a specific organization. These people, yes, they're trying to raise money for an organization, but they're also talking about policy change. So that to me is exciting.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate how you're bringing it full circle to us as something that's very fun to see, but also now as we're closing, you're talking about what changes we can make and be part of. And I hope that somebody listening to this can see that the different things you've talked about, being very organized, having a way in which you communicate and having that patience to be able to see something through one day or maybe months, depending on what the case may be in the project that you're working on. But also you still have that same passion about policy that you've carried through that is obviously still something that you want to pursue and continue to pursue professionally. And then we're so lucky to have you doing the things you're doing because it is a big task. And hopefully that's something that you will continue to do for a very long time and still causing those policy changes and making all that happen, which is wonderful. Molly, do you have any other questions or anything that we left out that we didn't touch on?
I don't think so. I just want to say thank you, Edith. You and I had not met before this, and now I think, boy, I want a cup of coffee with you. I want to pick your brain a little bit more. And I've always said, oh, nobody is born a fundraiser, but maybe we are, and we just don't know it. And as you said, you kind of unearthed it and discovered it. So I think, yeah, I'm gonna be thinking about that a little bit more. And I think for the younger people listening to this episode, Sylvia, I think one of the key takeaways can be you don't have to have it all figured out. I mean, none of us did. We still don't. But that you can take your passions, your desires, and what might lead you in one direction. It's a super good thing to realize, you know what? I don't want to do that. My husband thought he was going to be an elementary teacher, and he came home one day from a college class and he said, I don't like to speak in front of groups of people. Well, it's a problem if you're going to be a teacher. So now he makes maps. So stay tuned. Maybe you'll do a podcast, and he works for the Registrar of Voters in our county. So again, talking about policy and change. So I think, Edith, I just really appreciate you've opened my eyes to the fact that you can have a passion and you can think it's leading you one direction and then it takes you in a different direction, but the passion is still the same.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Edith, for really breaking down partnerships and how that is represented in the world that we're talking about in terms of development and how you engaged in that and how you defined it for yourself and how you continue to do that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure and an honor to be part of the podcast. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And for everyone else, please stay tuned for more insider career conversations that showcase career paths within development and fundraising.
This podcast is brought to you by Juarez Consulting. Learn more at juarezconsultinginc.com or follow us on social media or YouTube at Juarez Consulting.